Today we'll be visiting Canada's capital of chainsaw competition. Walk the swaying suspension bridge that towers 160 feet above the waterfall. Make our way through a magical rainforest, lush with lichen, moss, and transparent pools. Enjoy the fragrance in the rose garden that boasts over 3,500 rose bushes. Marvel at the collection of unique totem poles carved by the First Nations peoples of British Columbia. Take a relaxing scenic cruise before arriving at the historic island destination of Victoria. Before these steam locomotives chugged along the miles, people, horses, mules, and oxen were the only form of transportation. Having driven 81 miles from Clearwater, we are charging the Tesla in Kamloops. 2 hours and 123 miles later, we are here in the town of Hope in British Columbia. While our Tesla is charging, we walked up to this park and enjoying packed lunch overlooking the Fraser River. The small town of Hope is Canada's capital of chainsaw speed carving competition. Every 2 years, this international competition comes to this town and is considered one of the biggest events in the town of Hope. Displayed here are some of the carvings from this year's competition. 13 carvers from this area and around North America have joined the competition this year, each creating one main piece out of a large piece of wood provided by the organizers. Winding past Hope downtown is the Fraser River that in the past saw the fur traders, the gold rush of 1858 and early settlers. The present Fraser River sees water that are teeming with migrating salmon. It sees a highway and railways confined to the gorge carved by the river. This town of Hope became quite famous when Rambo was filmed here in 1981. We are now on the Port Mann Bridge, a 10-lane cable-stayed bridge, the widest in the world, and ice bombs have been periodic problems on these bridges during the winter when packs of snow and ice fall from the cable stays high above, damaging the vehicles. We are now in the city of Burnaby, east of Metro Vancouver, and for the night stay we have booked an Airbnb in this town. Since this place had a kitchen, and we also spotted a nearby grocery store, we decided to settle in and make dinner. We're enjoying mulligatawny soup, salad, and spicy steaming hot upama. We're going to Lichen Canyon Suspension Bridge. We are here in Lichen Canyon Park, one of the gems of the District of North Vancouver's park system. This park was named after Royal British engineer and North Vancouver resident John Lynn. This is a forested park that features waterfall views and hiking trails through a temperate rainforest. The temperate rainforest is a relatively rare ecosystem that extends along the coast of Alaska and British Columbia down to Northern California. The Tsleil-Waututh people called the Lichen Canyon area Kwahulcha, referring to a settlement in the area. And much of the trail in this park is along boardwalks, and today we are going to explore trails that are surrounded by second growth western red cedar, Douglas fir, and western hemlock trees that are completely draped with moss. Because in the rainy months of the year, heavy mist rises from this canyon. This is the Lynn Canyon Suspension Bridge, and the bridge towers 160 feet and spans the spectacular Lynn Canyon, providing views of this raging river and waterfalls below us. This bridge was originally built in 1912 as a private venture, and back then, patrons were charged a nickel to cross. Trails make its way through a scenic forest, which is lush with lichen, moss, and other sensitive ecology that are common in West Coast rainforest areas. Thousands of years ago, when glaciers gradually moved off the North Shore mountains, a crack in the ground likely led to the formation of Lynn Canyon. Over the last 10,000 years, Lynn Canyon has eroded the rock, creating the canyon that we see today. We are here at the 30-foot pool. This is an almost transparent pool where the mountain water flows, and the green forest is reflected in the surface of the water. This is the Lions Gate Bridge, recognized as the longest suspension bridge in the British Empire and one of the biggest construction projects during the 1930s. It was named in honor of a pair of pointed peaks along the North Shore mountain range known as the Lions. We are here at Prospect Point, the highest point in Stanley Park. It has a great lookout area where we can get views of the West Vancouver and the ocean, and also panoramic view of the Burrard Inlet and the Lions Gate Bridge. On July 26, 1888, the SS Beaver, the first steamship to sail the west coast of North America, was stuck on the rocks and debris just below Prospect Point, and the crew was forced to evacuate. In the following weeks, the wreckage was picked apart for souvenirs and valuable remnants and was ultimately sunk in 1892. This is the Hollow Tree in Stanley Park and the most famous tourist attraction in Vancouver for over the last 100 years. This is a 1,000-year-old western red cedar tree that has died but left a huge hollow stump. Having one's picture taken here, often seated in a vehicle backed into the tree, is a local tradition. We have come to the Stanley Park Rose Garden, a lush peninsula park of huge trees and spectacular flower gardens. This garden was first established in 1920 by the Kiwanis Club and boasts over 3,500 rose bushes, as well as a stylish West Coast inspired arbor that supports climbing roses and clematis. One of the joys of entering this garden is the splendid splash of colors, and the other is the striking fragrance that is carried on the breeze. Smells so good in here. These roses are called ballerina. Okay. Oh yeah, this is Rhapsody in blue. Oh, these are called Red Riding Hood. That's grim fairy tale. Rather grim. The first roses planted a century ago would have been much different than the ones that we see in the garden today. They were much fussier and required endless spraying and gardening. But these contemporary rose varieties are hardier and chosen specifically to grow best in this temperate climate. This park is a 988-acre oasis adjacent to downtown Vancouver and the ocean. For want of time, we decided to take the one-way scenic drive around the park, which is a great way to get a quick overview. This path that you see along the seawall actually surrounds the park, and we see walkers, runners and cyclists, and sometimes even wheelchair users on this very popular path. There are several historic stops, and one such photo stop is Vancouver's equivalent of the Copenhagen mermaid. She is the girl in a wetsuit. A very popular tour here is one on this old-fashioned horse-drawn carriage that meanders through the natural beauty of this wonderland with a professional guide fully narrating the tours. The stables here are said to be home to rare Greyshire horses imported from Yorkshire, England, and also Clydesdales, Belgians, and Percheron horses. Our next stop is this collection of totem poles and carvings representing the First Nations cultures from throughout British Columbia. These were like the coat of arms for the Indians, and the poles on display today are actually only replicas and replacements of the original totems, which were sent to various museums for preservation. Now, these totems were not idols nor were they worshipped. These monuments are created for multiple reasons. Some depict the history of a family, an individual, or an entire nation. Some tell an important story, and some are memorials. These were traditionally carved from the wood of the western red cedar tree, and each carving tells of a mythical or real event. For example, the eagle represents the kingdom of the air, the whale, the lordship of the sea, the wolf, the genius of the land, and the frog, the transitional link between land and sea. In the Kwakiutl ceremonies, carved staffs called talking sticks were held by people making important speeches on behalf of a chief. This particular pole represents the talking stick and characters in an Ovikino story belonging to Chief Wakas. The original pole was raised in front of Chief Waka's house in the 1890s, where the raven's beak opened to form a ceremonial entrance to the house, while the raven's body was painted on the front of the house. Carved house posts were used in traditional First Nations cedar homes to support the huge roof beams. Here we see the top of the totem pole is the thunderbird, then below that is a killer whale, and then a wolf, below that the wise one, then the mythical bird, and then comes a bear, and at the base is the raven. Beyond this ornate Millennium Gate marking its entrance, Vancouver's interesting and exotic Chinatown features modern buildings and many older ones dating from Victorian times. We are now in Gastown, the city's oldest neighborhood full of restaurants, galleries and shops set in restored Victorian buildings. The attraction here, however, is the steam clock, which puffs steam-powered chimes every 15 minutes, and we are waiting for it. And here it goes. Sabasan Ferry Terminal in Vancouver. We are boarding the 7 p.m. ferry to Victoria's Swartz Bay. Look at the lineup of the car. 6 o'clock now. We have about an hour's wait to get into the terminal. These ferries can accommodate up to 470 cars and 2,100 passengers and crew on board.
Hema's first visit on a car ferry.
We just got off the ferry and we are in Greater Victoria now, driving towards a small village called Scenic, and we have booked this Motel 6. This is pretty clean here. Small town, it's very nice. And this is Motel 6, but it's very well maintained. We have a nice yard and we are settling in for the night.